And welcome to another episode of Shooting Straight, Living Life in Truth. I'm Charles, your host for the evening. And tonight we're going to be discussing a topic that is near and dear to my heart, like always. And I find to be extremely important, especially in modern society tonight. And that is the subject of the law. Now, what I'm going to be talking about concerning the law is essentially, what is it? Why does it exist? What is its purpose? Why is it important? And why should we be respecting the law? Well, when I'm done tonight, I think you'll understand where I'm coming from and why the law is actually so important. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our topic. And we're going to start off tonight talking about the definition of the law. And what is the law by definition? Definition number one, there's three different ones here. There's three different applications. So the first one is the main one that we're going to be talking about tonight, but they all kind of have application for what I'm going to be dealing with tonight. But definition number one, the system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members and which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. Definition number two, a rule defining correct procedure or behavior in a sport. Number three, a statement of fact deduced from observation to the effect that a particular natural or scientific phenomenon always occurs if certain conditions are present. Let's take a look at the synonyms so we get a feel for the nuances here. Rules and regulations, system of laws, body of laws, constitution, legislation, code, legal code, charter, jurisprudence. Rule, regulation, principle, convention, direction, instruction, guideline, or practice. Fact, verity, certainty, certitude, principle. Now let's take a look at what it's not. These antonyms: misrule, disorder, anarchy, rebellion, insubordination, hazard, chance, irregularity, caprice, casualty, accident. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but in those antonyms, I didn't see one thing that would actually be considered a good thing. Did you? Not a single one of them. Not a single one. Right? And when the antonym is not good, that kind of tells you you should probably take the actual thing a little more seriously. All right. Now, the reason that I bring that up is because of a modern prevailing thought that I have heard repeatedly over and over and over and over again, especially in the last 20 years. It's not illegal unless you get caught. Why would anyone even remotely think that? Because, quite frankly, it's illegal whether you get caught or not. And even if you don't get caught, guess what? There's still consequences to violating the law. Yeah, you heard me. There's still consequences to violating the law. Now, whether they come immediately or not, it could be in 6 months, it could be in 20 years. There's still consequences to violating the law. Now, what are those consequences? Well, there's a lot of them. Obviously, there are many. Just depends on the type of law that you decide to break, what penalties that are associated with that law. And even if you don't get caught, there's still penalties that will be paid. In other words, a law enforcement officer doesn't have to arrest you and put you in jail and then you go to court and end up going to prison for it. I mean, you or your victim will pay, and so will other innocent people who weren't involved, because every action that we make, good or bad, affects not only us, but those around us and the ones around them. That whole 6 degree of separation that I mentioned back when I talked about respect, it applies here too. All right? So let's take a look at some of those non-legal consequences that I mentioned. You're going to suffer from a loss of integrity when you violate the law. It may financially cost you. If it doesn't cost you, it's going to cost the person that's the victim of your crime. There's going to be a loss of trust. There's going to be loss of relationships. There's going to be loss of jobs. Probably going to have a guilty conscience. And that guilty conscience is going to lead to the next thing of a need for a heightened awareness of behaviors. In other words, you're going to be looking over your shoulder. You're going to be looking at everybody's behavior, wondering, are they coming after me? I don't know about you, but that's pretty tormenting and not a way I really want to live. The last thing is that paranoia, which again is going to be, are they coming after me? Who knows? Does somebody see that? What's the deal? Right? So, I mean, there are a lot of consequences to violating the law. All right, let's just take an example, all right? Let's say you're a friend of mine, and you come to my house, right? And you see something that you like, right? Well, if you take that, and you take that back home, and you do it in such a way that it's hidden from me that I don't notice it until after you're gone, and I notice that it's gone, you've stolen from me. That's a violation of the law. It's a violation of the law. And you know what? I'm not going to trust you anymore because I can't. Because you took something from me. You cost me something. Because now I'm going to have to go spend more money to replace what I originally had in the first place that I worked hard for to get that money to be able to make that purchase. You've disrespected me. You failed to communicate with me. I mean, I'm the type of person that, quite honestly, if you see something that you like in my house and you really like it and you really want it, there's a fairly good possibility that if you were to just ask me for it, I'd probably give it to you. And anyone who knows me on a personal level for any length of time knows that's the type of person that I am. Because I don't really get attached to my things. But yet at the same time, if you violate my trust, if you violate our friendship, if you disrespect me and disrespect our friendship that way, then you've lost my trust. You've lost my ability to rely on you. You've lost my ability to depend on you for anything. And I'm going to cut you off. I'm just straight going to cut you off. Because I can't trust you anymore. And you didn't get caught. You didn't get arrested by law enforcement. You didn't go to jail. You didn't go to a trial. You haven't gone to prison. But it still cost you. And quite frankly, if you know me, you know that's probably a pretty heavy price to pay for something. I mean, think about it. In a marriage situation, right? You cheat on your spouse. You violated their trust. Guess what? It's not against the law. I mean, in some places it actually is, but for the most part, nowadays, it's not against the law for you to cheat on your spouse. But you know what you did? You violated the law of love. You violated the law of trust. You violated the law of fidelity, loyalty, honesty, integrity. You violated all those things. And what normally happens to a marriage when those things get violated? It goes away. It ends. It comes to a complete stop. You messed up. There are consequences to violating laws. Which brings me to my next point, which is a very important point. And I want you guys to see it. What is the purpose of the law? I mean, we got to understand it. We got to understand what the purpose of the law is in order for us to be able to have any kind of respect for it. Okay? So let's take a look at that real quick. The purpose of the law is to maintain law and order within a society. In other words, to maintain the peace. all right, to maintain some sense of order in organization, right? To maintain the status quo in society. The things that society says, you know what, these are cool, these are not, all right? That's the general status quo. That's what everybody agrees on. And to enable individuals, watch this, to have the maximum freedom. Now that's an interesting way to look at the law, isn't it? The next one is just as interesting. The maximum satisfaction of the needs of the people. Now, what do those last two sound like? That to me strikes a bell of two of our Creator endowed rights that are mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, that are later fortified into law by the Constitution. Now, that's how that works, guys. That's how that works. The beliefs that they cited in the Declaration of Independence were the very things that they put into the Constitution to protect those beliefs and make it a matter of law. The founding law of the United States of America. Those two rights that just mentioned, that brought to my mind, is the right endowed to us by our Creator to liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And guess what, folks? That's two of the purposes of the law, is to maintain peace and safety. In other words, the protection of life gives you the right to life, right? The Creator endowed right to life. The law helps to protect that by maintaining law and order. It ensures the maximum freedom for the individual. Your protection of the Creator endowed right to liberty. To ensure the maximum provision for needs that the people may have, that the individual may have. It's the Creator endowed right to pursue happiness. See, the maximum satisfaction or the maximum happiness that having your needs met will create. The purpose of the law is for that. Right? If you remember back to the definitions of the law, right? The very first definition was basically laws or system of rules which are particular to a country or a community, recognized as regulating the actions of its members, and which may be enforced, or which may be which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. In other words, it lays out what a community says is wrong, lays out what the community says is right. This is the right thing to do. If you violate this, then this is the penalty, because we don't want that in this community. Now, in the United States of America, we have an interesting system of law. It's complicated, but it's interesting. And if you really delve into it and really take a look at it, really, the highest authority is the city authority. Where you live, it's the city authority. Why? Because, think about it, and think about the definition of the law. The city is a community, right? It's just like an HOA, a homeowners association, right? You live in a particular residential area that has an HOA. They have established what the acceptable rules and regulations are, i.e. the laws of that community. These behaviors are acceptable, these are not, these are the penalties if you violate this, right? But the highest authority, really, in the United States of America is the people. Second to them is the city government, because that's the smallest community. And in that community, those are the laws, those are the regulations that that community lives by. Then you have your county level. Then you have your state level. County is what the people in that county want. State is what the entire state wants. All the different city municipalities, all the different communities, all the different counties all have input into what the state laws are. And the laws get created to create the maximum amount of freedom, the maximum amount of happiness, the maximum or to maintain law and order, the peace, to keep the peace amongst that entire state. And as you notice, each state has different laws. Some things are legal here in Florida, while some things are illegal in California. Some things are legal here in Florida that are actually illegal in, say, South Carolina, or Chicago, or DC, or Texas. Then you have the federal level, right? They're the ones actually with the least amount of authority in the way that our constitutional republic is established. Why do they have the least amount of authority? Because, quite frankly, they're dealing with the entire nation. The entire nation has to agree on particular laws that get set in place, to where anybody from a different nation comes to this country and they know, okay, these are the laws of this country. No matter where I go in this country, these are laws I have to abide by. All right, let's take a couple of. I hate to do this because I don't want this show to be political, be political, but as just an example, I'll take a couple of political hot buttons. All right, just to use them as examples.
Oh
right?
boy!
Let's, for the first one, yeah. Oh boy, here we go. I can hear that already. All right, now for the first one, let's take this whole abortion thing. Right? I can hear it now. Oh
How
my God.
dare you?
How dare you? Right? Yeah. See? I can hear that, right? Abortion. Right? I'm sorry, but the federal government really should have no say in abortion. That should be left up to the states. Why? Because every state feels differently about it. Just as an example, here in Florida, most Floridians feel a certain way about it. In California, they feel differently about it. Texas feels different about it than Florida does. Meanwhile, New Hampshire feels different about it than Oklahoma does. Nobody, no state in this country agrees 100% on the topic of abortion. So why is the federal government making a law concerning about it when none of the states agree on it? The states should set their own rules, should set their own laws for it. It's their community. It's that community that says, hey, this is good or this is bad. Now, I'm not coming down on either side of it. I'm just pointing out, a law perspective here, right? In the way this country is set up. Each state should be setting its own rules concerning that particular thing, because in each state, that's how those people want to live. Now, I get it. Not every place within the state, not everybody within the state feels that way. I mean, for crying out loud, right here in Florida, you can take a look at the political maps. Our major cities usually tend to go in a blue way in the Democrat side, whereas the rest of the state has a tendency to go on the conservative side. But there's also still a ton of independents in this state. So who's actually going to decide all that stuff? Well, based on what I just said, it should probably go all the way down to the city or the county level. Because obviously not everybody's going to agree in the state on how to handle the issue. But nevertheless, let's take a look at another example. All right, it's another political hot button. The Second Amendment, firearms. Right? There's federal laws on that. As a general rule of thumb, the entire nation agrees that the laws that the federal government put into place are good and should be abided by, and that's how the general United States of America feels about it. Okay, it's a good thing, right? There is general consensus across all states that it should be handled a certain way. Well, that's a matter of federal law. Okay? Another part of that, federal law is that if you're going to transport a firearm across state lines, you're under federal law now. Okay? And what that means is your firearm has to be unloaded in a locked box in one place in your vehicle while your ammunition is locked up in another place. They can't be in the same place together. If you cross state lines and you violate that law, you're in violation of federal law. The state has nothing to say about that. You know why they don't have anything to say about it? Because it's already been agreed upon by all the states that that's the best way to handle the situation. But yet at the same time, here in the state of Florida, we have certain laws concerning firearms and the ownership of it. One of which happens to be you have to have a CCW in order to carry a firearm on your person. Meanwhile, in other states, you have what's known as constitutional carry, meaning you can carry it on your person without a permit, and you can carry it openly or you can carry it concealed. It doesn't matter. You have a constitutional right to carry it. That's what that is. Now, on the other hand, let's go to the opposite extreme, right? Because we've seen the extreme, and then we've seen the middle of the ground, middle of the road type aspect in there, and you go out to California. Well, you got to jump through hoops to be able to carry a firearm on your person. And there's all kinds of regulations that go in there that go even deeper and farther than what the federal law says. And it's far more restrictive in California than it is here in Florida. Go up to Illinois and specifically look at Chicago. Just one city, one community within the state of Illinois. Some of the most restrictive gun laws in the country are in Chicago. New York is the same way. So, again, respect for the law, respect for its purpose, its design. I mean, we are in a unique country with a unique setup when it comes to the law. And as I showed you in the purposes for the law, it's designed specifically to maintain law and order, to maintain a status quo that's agreeable upon by a particular community, to enable individuals to enjoy a maximum amount of freedom, to enable someone to have a maximum satisfaction of having their needs met. That's the purpose of the law. Now, here's another perspective for you based on that, right? That you may not have thought of, right? When you think of the law is basically a teacher, a school teacher. It teaches you what to do and what not to do in relationship to the people around you. It teaches you that the group of people around you accept this or reject this as being a bad thing. That's what it's designed for. Now, here's another interesting perspective for you concerning the law. If the law is all about respecting your neighbor and respecting the people around you and abiding by what they see as being agreeable or disagreeable, then in a lot of ways, it's teaching you how to respect the people around you. It's teaching you how to love other people. Now that's an interesting concept, isn't it? The law being a teacher for what love is. Well, think about that for a minute. And okay, at the risk of somebody saying, oh, now you're just getting religious about stuff. I don't care. Let's just take a look at the Ten Commandments, which everybody agrees is a good foundation for morality and for values, right? Well, the last 5 of the Ten Commandments are talking about a parallel, a lateral relationship here. How we deal with each other, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if you love your neighbor like you love yourself, you're not going to steal from them. You're not going to abuse them. You're not going to be covetous or jealous of what they have, because you recognize and realize what it took for them to get that, and you're going to be happy for them. You definitely aren't going to murder them. And you're not going to cheat on them. If you're a man, you're not going to cheat on your best friend with his wife. If you're a woman, you're not going to cheat on your best friend with her husband. If you truly love these people and you truly respect that relationship, then you're not going to do any of those things, and you're not going to violate those 5 commandments. Well, the same thing is true of the law. If you respect your friendships and you respect the people who are your friends and you love them, then you're not going to steal from them. You're not going to do any of those things. You're definitely not going to murder them. You're not going to rape somebody. I mean, does that make sense to you? I mean, that's really what the law is about. All right, let's just take a minor, what most people consider to be a minor situation, right? Driving a car, right? We all know there are traffic laws, right? Those laws are designed to maintain law and order. They're designed to maximize your freedom and liberty to move about and move around. They're there to maximize your satisfaction on being able to drive, your need of being able to drive, right? But what happens when someone violates the law? What happens when somebody violates the traffic law? There's a good possibility they put your life in danger, right? I mean, we are out there driving around 3,000 to 20,000 pound guided missiles, basically. Those vehicles only do what we make them do. Think about that for a minute. You know, the law says slower traffic, keep right. At least it does here in the state of Florida. So if you're doing the speed limit or below the speed limit, you should be over in the far right-hand lane. If you're doing around the speed limit or slightly above it or slightly below it, then you should be in that middle lane. It's known as the cruising lane. You know, you don't intend on getting off the interstate anytime soon, and you've got a little ways to go, so you're going down the middle lane. You're going a little bit faster than the people in the right lane who are doing below the speed limit. But then you got that left-hand lane, known as the passing lane. If you're in that middle lane and you're driving a little bit faster than the person in front of you, your way to get out from around them and keep from being slowed down is by being able to go into the left-hand lane and pass them and then get back in the middle lane. That's how the law is designed. That's how the law is set up. It keeps things flowing. It keeps people happy. It doesn't interfere with anybody, and it keeps an order to things, so that you don't have chaos, so that you don't have anarchy, so you don't have accidents, so people don't get hurt, so people don't die. But what happens when you get somebody who is traveling at the rate of speed that should be over in the right-hand lane? What happens when they're over in the passing lane? They back up traffic for miles, and nobody can get around them because they're not traveling fast enough to pass anybody. And they're not getting out of the way. So now you got a traffic jam. Now you got everybody held up. Now you're interfering with other people's ability to maximize the satisfaction. You see how that works? That's the law. So why is there this prevailing mentality nowadays that says it's only illegal if you get caught? No, folks. If it's in the law, it's there because the community, the county, the city, the state, the nation is saying this is right, this is wrong. This is how you're courteous, how you be courteous to the people around you. This is how you respect the people around you. This is how you show love to the people around you. And this is at the very basic human level. And yet there's this prevailing mentality and prevailing thought that it's only illegal if you get caught. Well, I mean, come on. What is it going to take for us to realize that the law is there for a reason and it's there for our benefit? It's there for everyone's benefit. Let's give it some respect. Let's obey it. Because if we don't, we get anarchy. What do I mean by anarchy? Well, let's take a look at the summer of 2019. Our country was a war zone because somebody didn't respect the law. Somebody didn't obey the law. And all chaos broke out. And it only took one person or two people or three people or a small group of people in one particular community to step outside the bounds of the law and rebel. And what happened? It caught fire. Next thing you know, 19, 20, 30 different cities around the country were up in flames with people rioting, people being killed, people being injured, law enforcement officers being attacked. That's what happens when we don't respect the law. That's what happens when we say it's only illegal if you get caught. But no, in modern society, we got people, so what, you're a rapist. So what, you're a killer. So what, you're only in jail because you Molotov cocktailed somebody's house. So let's bail you out and let you go do it again. That's how little respect for the law some people in our nation have. Why? Why? Think about that. The law is there for a reason. The law is there for our benefit. My benefit, your benefit, the people around us, their benefit. Aren't you glad it's illegal for someone to commit murder? Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be able to go outside your house without being afraid that somebody might come along and kill you. Aren't you glad it's illegal to steal or to commit larceny? Because if it wasn't, anybody could walk into your house and take your stuff and walk out, and there'd be no consequences. You'd be out that money that you spent to buy that stuff, but you'd have no legal recourse because there'd be no law against it. That's why we have the laws that we do. It's common basic courtesy. And if we can't even do that, then why do we even have a law? That's a tough question, ain't it? We have laws for a reason. Let's respect them. If we did, a lot of the problems that we have in America today wouldn't even exist. If we just had basic respect for a human being as a human being and believed in treating them right and treating them the way we wanted to be treated, it would eliminate probably 99% of the problems we have in America. I want you to think about that. Because if you have no respect for the law, you're going to do anything that you want to do. And you don't care about the consequences of the law because you don't care about the law. That's why we still have people that murder people. That's why we still have people that steal from people. That's why we still have people who rape people. Because they don't care. We've got to change that. And the only way that it's going to change is by changing with the man in the mirror. And yes, I include myself in that. I'm not perfect about it. But I certainly do everything within my power to obey the law and respect the people around me. And when all of us start doing that, we'll start seeing the law's purpose fulfilled. We'll start seeing people maximize their satisfaction. We'll start seeing people enjoying maximum freedom and liberty. We'll have law and order where we don't have to look over our shoulders and wonder if someone's going to attack us, steal us, rob us, or assault us. Wouldn't that be nice? I think that would be awesome. And here's another thing I'm just going to throw out there. Yes, it's a political hot button, but this particular event had its anniversary just this past weekend. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it was a major event that I remember because it took place back in 1989. And it was a tragedy that was felt around the world. And it happened in China. A bunch of students went to Tiananmen Square to protest some of the laws of the Communist Chinese Party had put into place that was infringing on their freedoms and restricting their ability to enjoy freedom. They wanted freedom, and they were standing up for something that was perfectly reasonable. You know what the CCP did? Are you even familiar with it? Because the CCP is trying to cover it up. They're trying to make it so that people forget about it. But the reality is, that day, in 1989, at least 3,000 students lost their lives. One of them was even seen on TV that went around the world, international TV. People saw where one of those students was run over by a tank. Yeah, you heard me right. Got ran over by a tank because the government sent the military after unarmed students. And still to this day, the CCP hasn't changed. Millions of Uyghurs sit in a concentration camp simply because they don't agree with the CCP. The extremes when it comes to the law, you have one extreme of no law with complete anarchy, which we saw an example of in 2019 with all the riots that took place and billions of dollars worth of people's property were damaged, businesses destroyed, and people's lives destroyed. Many of them, the very people that the rioters were claiming to try and protect. That's anarchy. They're mad, so they wanted to express themselves by destroying somebody's property. Well, if you're mad and you want to destroy property, why don't you destroy your own property? Not someone else's. You destroy your own property, you're not violating a law. Nobody's going to say anything about it. You destroy someone else's property, someone's going to say something about it because you're violating a law. Then you have the opposite extreme, which I gave you an example of with Tiananmen Square and the CCP, where it's absolute tyranny, where you have no individual freedoms or liberties. You're only allowed to do what the government says you're allowed to do. And if you disagree with the government, you might find yourself staring down the barrel of their army, of their military, without the ability to defend yourself. Remember I said earlier that the foundation and the principles that the Constitution was based on were found in the Declaration of Independence? Read the entire Declaration of Independence and you'll find out just how nasty of a life it was prior to us declaring our independence from England, from the King of England, who was doing some pretty horrible things, to include falsely accusing people of committing crimes and then hauling them off back to England to stand court and stand trial in England, where they were falsely accused and had false evidence presented against them and were sentenced to death for doing absolutely nothing except disagreeing with the king. Do we really want to go back to that? Because that's what our law is designed and set up to protect us from. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness are all fortified and codified in the Constitution. The freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the freedom to worship how you want to worship, the right to bear arms to protect yourself against a tyrannical government. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. To protect you against an illegal search and seizure. To prevent the government from spying on you. It's all written down in the law. It's all written down in the Constitution. It's all part of the law. And we, the people, control what that law is. We control what that law is by the people we send to D.C. to represent us. We control what's in that law by who we vote for city council, for city government, for county government, for state government. We control that. We need to start thinking about who we send up there to these positions of government to represent us, to make sure they're representing us the way we want them to represent us, so that the laws that we have in this country represent what we believe is right, what we believe is wrong. We have to respect the law, folks. It's there for a reason. So I'm going to cut it off here as far as my content for this evening, because I can tell I'm going to get even more fired up if I keep going. But nevertheless, I hope I stressed and I hope I answered some of your questions about what the law is, what its purpose is, why we have it, and why it's important. Because that's really what I wanted to go over, because we drastically and desperately need a return to law and order. And we drastically and desperately need people to come back to having a respect for the law. We really do. Because too many don't. And with that said, I want to go ahead and open this up for our question and answer period. I'm not putting the phone line up yet. Again, we're still working out some bugs, still trying to work some things out. And as soon as we get those released and figured out, we'll get that phone line back up for you. But in the meantime, please use the YouTube live chat. Interact with us. That's one of the reasons why I do this show. It's because I want to interact with you. I want to answer your questions. I want you to understand where I'm coming from, but at the same time, I also want to understand where you're coming from. So any comments or any questions, Go ahead and put them up on YouTube live chat for me. All right. Um, oh, my producer was just asking me to make some comments about the whole defund the police thing. All right. Look, guys, law enforcement officers is said right there in the name. Yes, I know we have some crooked ones. Yes, I know we have some bad ones. And yes, I know there's some that do some bad things and don't obey the law either. Okay? Well, next week we're going to talk about that sort of thing, because next week we're talking about accountability. And that's all part and parcel with the law. Okay? But in reality, law enforcement officers are there to make sure that the law is enforced, make sure that the law is abided by. Okay? They're there to ensure that there is law and order in society. They're there to make sure that you get to have maximum satisfaction in your pursuit of your happiness. They're there to make sure that you have peace. They're there to make sure you don't have to look over your shoulder and wonder if you're going to get jumped from behind and hit over the head with something to knock you out and then get robbed blind and put in the hospital and have hospital bills that nobody's going to pay because there's no law enforcement officer there to arrest the individual that did it, to cause them to have to pay for it because they're responsible. Law enforcement is there for our benefit. They deserve respect. They're on the front lines. Folks, I served 18 years in the U.S. military, in the U.S. Army. I put my life on the line. I put my life out there in front of thousands of weapons pointed at me, ready to kill me. I did it to protect the Constitution of the United States of America and all that it represents. I did that so you could have peace. I did that so you could have law and order that brings peace. I did that so that you wouldn't have to worry about someone coming into your house and you having to go, Heil Hitler. My grandfather fought that battle. The one I fought was so that you wouldn't have to worry about hopping on an airplane and worrying about some terrorist taking it over and flying it into the World Trade Center or the Pentagon or the White House or anywhere else in this country. And I know you're sitting there probably wondering and asking, well, how did you get on that when you were talking about law enforcement officers? Well, folks, guess what? The same thing that I did on an international level to protect the Constitution, to protect this country, to protect your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all the freedoms that we enjoy in the United States of America, I did that on an international level. Because that's the federal government's responsibility, is to protect the citizens of the United States from foreign enemies. Law enforcement officers do the same thing I did on a local basis, at a local level, domestically. And there are laws that govern the way they behave, and there are laws that govern how they can treat us and what they can and can't do. The same thing applied to me in the Army when I was overseas. They were called rules of engagement. There were certain things I could do, certain things I couldn't do. There was international law. In other words, a whole conglomerate of international countries, a whole conglomerate of different countries all came together and said, hey, these are acceptable behaviors in wartime. These are unacceptable behaviors in wartime. The rules of war, the laws of war. Laws exist for a reason. Otherwise, there is complete chaos and complete anarchy. And nobody lives in peace. Nobody is able to pursue what makes them happy and have the satisfaction of their needs being met. Because when you get your need met, there's always somebody else over here that's going to say, hey, you know what? I need that more than you do. Give me that. And you can't do anything about it. Either that or it breaks out into a brawl and one of you gets hurt or killed. Law enforcement officers are here to do what I did on an international basis domestically. They deserve our respect. because they're who enforce the law. They're the ones who make sure nobody violates the law. They're the ones that come after those criminals who do violate the law to make sure they pay the consequences for that. And if we defund them, they don't have the ability to do that. And that's just reality. That's shooting straight. That's living life in truth. Respect our law enforcement officers. All right. So that's my take on that. So, do we have any questions? Anything come in? Okay, guys. Apparently, I answered all your questions. I'm kind of surprised by that because I'm not perfect and I don't know everything. So I was pretty sure somebody was going to have a question, but since we don't, if you guys are still watching, you like what I'm doing, you like this vlog, you like the films that I've been making, and you're considering supporting us, on your screen is the link to be the best way of doing that. And please, if you do decide to donate and you do decide to support us, and whether it's this vlog or whether it's our filmmaking efforts or some of our creative photography stuff, if you want to support us and donate to us, that's the link to do it. But please, make sure you put a note on there as to what you actually want that money to go for, whether it's the blog, whether it's our filmmaking projects, or whether it's some of our creative photography stuff or our artistic stuff. All right, all this stuff takes time, it takes money, it's not cheap. Okay, I mean, just to give you an idea, all right, I've been doing photography and videography now for 7 years, a little over 7 years. In that 7 years, it took me 7 years to get where I am now, to have the ability to do the things that I do. Right now, as far as video equipment, camera equipment, lights, software, computers, all that kind of stuff, I probably have in the neighborhood of about $40,000 wrapped up in that kind of stuff, maybe even more. I'm not actually going to put that out publicly, but the exact amount for obvious reasons. But nevertheless, I just want to give you the idea. It's not cheap. It's not inexpensive. It takes time. It takes money. And any support you guys decide you want to give us is going to be greatly appreciated. But please just make sure to put a note on that, because I value my integrity a lot. And I want to make sure that what you donate to gets supported. What you want supported gets supported. So if you want it to go to the vlog, please make a note. This donation is for the vlog, or this donation is for your filmmaking efforts, or this donation is for your creative artistic photography. Just whatever you decide you want to support, please make a note of that, and I will make sure that that money gets to the appropriate account and gets used the way you want it to be used. All right. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Next week, we're going to be talking about accountability. So until then, you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.